And we are live. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is you are in the world, and welcome to another edition of Living World of Darkness, Rage Across New York. The week leading up to Christmas was quite a rough one for one Camille Haveru, and having said that, she was absent from set for about 4 days. On one of those 4 days, her kinfolk had come to seek assistance with their wayward guru. And whether that presence was missed or not, uh, Camille hasn't really discovered yet because she hasn't talked to really the only person that she's had to answer to thus far on the set, considering it is the senior theurge. And so, after a studious 4 days have been spent grasping the concept of a ritual, Kemi makes her way into the Umbra and seeks out the only other theurge that she knows that is of rank. We'll start our scene with Kemi searching.
Well, there are certain logical places to look. The first and foremost probably being the Cairnheart, which is a pretty tried and true location, and will prove fruitful, if only because Great White Mouse is one of the few spirits that is tended daily. And as such, 10 Point can be found there, probably nested in front of the shrine to Great White Mouse, and um, covered in far more than her usual spirit buddy, hosting a number of mice that are clamoring on her, several eating out of her palms, and just generally being kind of politely conversational in spirit speech, and just speaking to the smaller representations of their totem. But nothing formal, uh nothing quite so invested as to be something that would be hard to interrupt.
Well, Camille will she'll make her way up, and in an effort to make her presence known, she'll actually take off her spider satchel as she sits down on a rock nearby and just kind of lets it plop onto the surface of the rock, hopefully making enough sound as to get the theurge's attention.
Yep, thankfully the keeper is not so deeply invested as to be oblivious to people coming and going. And so she'll probably, in fact, give a glance up as Cammy enters and begin just kind of wrapping up her conversations, gingerly escorting several of the mice to the ground, dumping the offering in her palms at the foot of the shrine, and just kind of letting them go at it, while the one faithful little mouse bro takes whatever prize he's gotten and scurries back up to perch on one of her antlers, nibbling happily. And with that, she will go ahead and rouse herself up and dust herself, glancing sidelong to the junior theurge.
And at this point, she's ignited a cigarette and she takes a long drag out of it before looking over at 10 Point. Duties keep you pretty busy, don't they?
They do. I see you are back among us, Henri.
She nods.
And, hmm. The medicine, she'll move somewhat closer. Probably, seeing as she's sat on the ground, crouching down again to get nearer her height, albeit in a crouch still somewhat taller. The antlers certainly help. Anrai, how frequently do you suffer your malady?
Truly depends. It's triggered by a number of things. Sometimes it's worse than others, but every other month. Sometimes it's a stint of every month. Usually it's not terribly bad. This time it was.
And her eyebrows raised slightly in interest, but her expression is verging on what one dare might call just ever so slightly stern.
I've carried this a new side of template, and I'm not sure I like it.
Anrai, did you have issues back home performing your duties because of this malady?
From time to time, it got in the way of my studies. Most of the time, I could power through it. The points where it became crushing and unable to do anything was very rare.
Have you had much practice, Anrai, in performing prolonged chiminages?
Other than daily observances, no.
I worry that even daily observances may become an issue. Your absence was noted. It did no harm this time, but it could.
There's not a whole lot of way and options that I know of to make it go away. Other than with just time and support. I don't think that medications that the human populace take to deal with it would do much, if anything.
I know precious little of these things. I imagine even if there was something that would work, it would require awakening. But as a stopgap, Onrai, until I have seen that this does not become a repeat issue, I am afraid that I will have to ask you, as ranking Theurge, to take no chiminages with spirits of the sept that cannot be fulfilled on the spot. I have already seen the consequences of chiminage going unpaid, and it is not always something that I can pick up the slack on. And truth be told, as things are now, even if I could, normally, I am kept very busy. I hope this does not sound unreasonable.
Cammy shakes her head. It's practical.
And some of the sternness leeches off as she gives a bit of a nod. Goes ahead and heaves herself back up to her feet. Not in a looming sort of way, just in a, oh, I can stand and be casual now sort of way. Ah, good. I should have expected that you would be able to appreciate practicality.
Unnecessary risks are always. And she shrugs. It's not something I like to do. And in this
Best,
case,
best that the potential risk be mitigated.
I don't know what that will limit me to as far as duties here to assist you. That would mean.
And she lifts a hand and just kind of like runs her fingers idly up and down her jawline in thought. It will mean that I have to see more before I'm comfortable offering you a place as a keeper. But still, it would have taken time regardless.
Hmm. Well, in any event, things as they can't always be helped. It doesn't mean that progress doesn't still happen.
There's a firm nod.
I have been working on the understanding of rituals, and I have learned the rite of binding.
And there's an idle nod, though just after there's kind of a thoughtful pause and a knit of brow. And what other rites do you know, Anrai?
Currently working on lessons with the rite of cleansing, as it seems to be very appropriate for this area.
And the knit of brow remains. And she finally just kind of, almost in shock, just out and out says it. Anrai, what manner of rite of passage were you given that you needed no rites to proceed?
Treating with the spirits, weaver spirits, near our homestead in preparation for a raid, and beyond that, setting up logistical and tactical readouts.
And she finally shrugs away the better part of her furrowed brow. Strange. All the same, so long as you are learning them now. You said you have only just learned the rite of binding.
She'll nod.
And she does heave a bit of a sigh, glance out to the entrance of the Cairn Heart, and finally just gestures her to follow with a hand, and doesn't make like a fucking anything really, just kind of starts sauntering that away, giving her time to rouse up and follow.
She rouses up and she follows. And
Madness.
Tempoint will actually hear the sound of a crinkling of a package opening, and she happens to turn around. There's a Twinkie halfway in Cammy's mouth.
She'll probably turn an inquisitive glance at the sound. Just in time to catch her like mid shove.
She'll stop, look up at 10 point, and then the half that's not in her mouth, she'll just hold out towards 10 point.
It's not even that long. It's just like that fleeting glance just in time to catch her like mid gullet on it. But she doesn't seem especially perturbed and just continues on.
Well, then the other half is eaten.
Even your fucking Twinkies. Jesus Christ. And 10 Point will actually lead her around to the nearest of the lakes. And we'll hunker down there. Like actually right in the water's edge, probably kneeling to spare the better part of her clothing from the wet. But actually kneeling right where the water's lipping at the dirt. And we'll shove a hand into her swag and draw out a pair of small clay pots, waiting for her to settle next to her, giving a pat if she needs the encouragement. And as soon as she's down, putting the pot in front of her, just holding it out in offering.
She she gets into that like catcher squat or umpire squat because she's not going to sit on the wet ground.
That it does make a certain amount of sense with it being cold. 10 Point apparently doesn't love herself, so she is kneeling and soaking the lower part of her skirts in the process. That won't
But
suck later.
she also has skirts, so she can actually lift it up and make sure that the parts like her knees and shins and all that, it's just the skin getting wet. Cammy's in pants. They should be
Madness.
wet all day.
But yeah, Cammy will pop a squat and get a small clay pot held in front of her. Very small.
And she'll take the pot and look it over.
And it is an odd merge of styles. It is obviously a handmade little pot, painted white, and decorated with glyphs in blue. Um, None of them Guru, actually. Some manner of native glyphs. Though there have been borderlines drawn around to the top and the bottom of the glyphs, with a small, delicate, but very simple little knot partway around. Celtic style. An odd merge of cultural styles there.
Cammy will observe and she will inspect, but she will say nothing.
And so once she has it and has had a chance to look it over, 10 Point will gesture vaguely out to the lake and call out to some of the little water gafflings that are dancing around just under the surface, perhaps playing with bits of ice where the water's stiller at the edge. But we'll beckon some of them over, and we'll go through. I'm not even going to detail because I can't brain right now. But basically, we'll show her simply enough. Make an offer of very simple chiminage. She does not, in fact, offer gnosis. She will offer a deed, probably to continue picking up this particular lake, making sure that any litter left by the tourists is policed up. And once she has struck an accord with the little gaffling, we'll lower the pot to the water, putting it just below the surface so that the spirit can flow in, and we'll enact the rite of binding. And actually, if I'm going by the book, probably has several small pots because, yeah. I have no idea what you named this scene, so I'll let you do your thing.
HG.
Very classy.
I was gonna retitle it later.
If I remember right, it will be Wits Rituals Div 7. I've scrolled too far. Still scrolled too far. It is. Make sure I'm not a cheater. And I'm doing this because we need them. So that will be a grand total of 3 successes, which means as she lowers a handful of the pots and offers her deal and begins the process of binding, it will actually be 3 of the small pots that the tiny gafflings flow into. And as she goes through the rite, ends up stoppering 3 small jars. Afterwards, lifting them up, uttering a couple words of thanks, and depositing them back in her swag. And then we'll glance aside to Cammy to have her follow suit.
Cammy has that look on her face. She's watching and observing, and she takes a moment and then finally puts her hands down near the water, sort of beckoning one of the little gafflings over, and following the orders that 10 Point had given her, decides to offer a point of gnosis rather than offering to do any kind of deal over a prolonged amount of time.
Gasp.
Wow, a Garu or a learner who listens?
Madness.
And she'll actually just kind of gesture for some of the empty clay pots.
Yep, as she's enacting the deal, 10 Point will set a few more down just in case they take kindly to the binding.
Two successes with the willpower.
So, 2 pots.
And Cammy just kind of smiles, looking at them as they climb in, and she'll cork them and look at the 2 pots. And she'll reach into her swag, and she'll pull out a length of wire and cut it in 2, and then she'll wrap one around each of like the necks of them and bundle them together. And she'll hold it up and look at the 2, and then she looks over at 10 Point with kind of just an easygoing smile.
And 10 Point does nod approval. Though she's still not all invested with her grins and whatnot. She doesn't do that but so often in public. So it's just kind of a neutral, approving nod, followed by a light tap at the top cork of one of them. I have clay, if you need it. They take to them better if they're handmade, though I don't know how well you do such a thing. All the same, if you want to make up for your absence, make a habit. The Sept is dire in need of more Gaia's breaths. Every time we go on a mission, they are expended, and I can only create so many. And if I create only these, I can create nothing else.
I have to expand my understanding and continue to work on what I can, but she'll kind of nod. I'll, I'll do what I can. She kind of thinks over what sort of items she could use, that she could have in ready supply, given that these are Gaian spirits. The idea of using flash drives and working in that techno Gaianism that many of the glasswalkers do, she will have to confer with the spirits before she tries any of that.
And 10 Point will actually go so far as to do something kind of comical and reaches into the swag. And each of these little pots has a tiny little, like, you could call it a handle, but you could barely poke a finger through it. It's really not a very big little clay loop. It's obviously meant to be strung with a ribbon, which is made very evident as she reaches into the swag and tugs out um, what looks like a really crappy necklace. It's basically a ribbon strung with 10 more of the small pots that have all been fully prepared, simply have not been bound, and we'll offer that over to hold her over in the meantime. You can also use dove spirits, though obviously the deal you make is different. If you find other spirits who are equally capable of healing, you may appeal to them with whatever item seems fit.
She'll nod.
But all in all, a Gaia's breath is a Gaia's breath, and most Gaian spirits are well disposed to being bound to them. Never mind that it is usually a very brief binding.
How big are those clay pots each?
Um, hmm. They are pretty fucking small. Trying to look for a size comparison. Um,
Like, are they the size of, like, say a sample e-juice bottle?
they're more round than the small bottles that you usually get e-juice in. But yeah, probably like that height max.
Okay. So they're not little trinkets. They're not like something that you could wear on a necklace or anything like that.
Um, you could. I guess they're about that size, just squatter and rounder the way that she makes them. So let's see if this actually has an ounceage on it. 15 milliliters. It can hold an ounce or two of liquid. It's not very big. It doesn't take much. It would be a little bulky for a necklace. You wouldn't want to wear more than one on a
Mhm.
necklace, but it could totally work. It would just look a little hippie-ish.
Well, then what Cammy pulls out of her bag is the best way I can describe it is, those cookie tins that end up becoming like, a sewing supply tin?
Uh-huh.
One of those lined with cotton balls. And she'll take a couple of items out of there that are in plastic sort of blister packages. They look to be computer chips of some kind, out of character. They're processors. Very delicate. And she will put the unused and the finished uh, clay pots into this tin, so that way they don't break and get crushed inside the swag.
Madness.
And she'll put it back inside the satchel, not a swag. She has a satchel. You
She
have a swag.
does.
And then she'll stand up and sort of clean off her hands.
And 10 Point will do much the same, wringing the worst of the water out of the bottom of her skirt.
Aside from cleansing and binding, what other rituals would you suggest I learn, Raya?
And she pauses to mull it over for a moment. I would say that the minor rites do more good than they're credited and should not be overlooked. And the breath of Gaia may help you with your kind of gestures vaguely malady. It brings peace. The rite of contrition is wise. Bone rhythms, breath of Gaia, prayer for the prey. It is situational, I'll confess. Rite of the Questing Stone, Talisman Dedication. There are a number. I would say prioritize cleansing, but afterwards, perhaps it is wise to learn contrition, so that when offense is offered, it is easier to resolve.
She mulls it over, and she'll pull out her phone and she'll begin to sort of type in a priority thing, giving them interesting little code names, just in case anyone finds this phone. But she goes through the process of kind of planning out about 2 to 3 months worth of like 2 to 3 months worth of a plan of what she'll study. So yeah, kind of like a syllabus, I
Madness.
guess.
I mean, 10 Point just kind of tilts her head, but doesn't really ask. She's just being a glasswalker and doing weird glasswalker things.
Being organized.
Typing on your phone? In the Umbra? About Theurge stuff? You're weird.
Well, nobody ever called Cammy normal. Um, she she'll take the moment and once she has let down, she'll look over at 10 Point and she'll smile and she'll pull out a wrapped Twinkie and hand it over to 10 Point.
10 Point is summarily Twinkie bribed. She will accept it. Are there any other questions you have, Onrai? I can't remember. Did we review the boon and the ban the Great White Mouse offer?
No, we didn't.
Great White Mouse will lend you greater proficiency in use of your teeth and in hiding as you scurry place to place. But you must never, never harm her material kin. No rodents.
Rodents are mice specifically.
Rodents.
She'll nod.
No mice, no rats, no squirrels.
I see people eating a lot of rabbits around here. Aren't they technically rodents?
No.
Hmm.
And that is a strangely common question.
Human classifications within the mind, I guess.
It's just kind of a helpless shrug. Whatever the case, keep it in mind. The mistake has been made once already, and the whole sept suffered terribly for it.
She'll nod. And then she'll kind of look around. I'm assuming that the relative peace and quiet we've had over the few days that I've been here, almost a week, a little over maybe, that war is not upon us.
No. A resolution was found.
That's good. So what do we turn to now? Where does our focus go?
There is some manner of worm company to be investigated.
Do you have details? I can get to work on that.
I would have to ask my Raya. I believe he has copies of all the paperwork. It came down to, I believe they called them medical experiments. People being turned into Fomori.
She'll nod.
But otherwise, it has been blessedly quiet for once. It is a good time to do these. And she gives one of the corks a light tap before returning it to her swag. To build up our resources. To perhaps take the time to make sure that we are well established in the city. So that when the next thing rears its head, we are prepared. The more that you can learn and take on about the Sept, tending the spirits when you can, the better. There is a Theurge cub recently brought to the Sept that I am tutoring. And the more time I can spend with her, the better.
If you like, I can stop by those when I can.
Say what?
Nothing's stop by those lessons when she could.
Ah, she'll nod agreement. If you like. She'll actually take a pensive expression for several long moments because Katie had a thought and then lost it. It was such a good one. I had it. It was right there. Ah, you're a glasswalker. How hard would it be, you think? I, don't exist? Technically? It is not that there is something to change, it is that there is nothing there in the first place when it comes to me and human record keeping.
That just gives Cammy a smile. Like a big old smile.
I mean, she honestly looks pretty blank on the whole thing. Like this is completely out of her league, out of her comfort zone, and just far beyond her grasp.
It would depend on exactly what you wanted and how deep you wanted it to go. Fake ID is extremely easy. The more fleshed out your details go, the paperwork that you have versus what you don't, it's more and more involved.
I am told that an ID at the very least is important to have. And Myra has offered to, as far as human legality is concerned, take me as a sister. So that the name that I was holding would be a real one.
if they already have an existing identity, adding you onto it is a bit more of a challenge, but I can look into it.
I would appreciate it. It seems important. It has not been a problem for me, but there has been some pressure to resolve it in case it should be. Well, I imagine that saying I simply left it at home would work for most things. I can't afford to be held away in human hands for but so long. And she kind of gestures upwards vaguely. They only take a day to grow back, Conray.
The biggest thing I think you would have to worry about is if you were actually stopped by the police for any reason.
I can't imagine that I would be, but there does seem to be concern.
If you don't have any means of being identified, they can hold you for as long as they want.
And I imagine that they will have cameras.
Most government facilities do.
Making it a problem.
She'll nod. If you're caught for whatever reason.
I had hoped that it would be easier to create an identity where none existed than to create a false one. But I know precious little of how these things work.
The complexities of it all are not insurmountable. It's just an issue of getting it right and making sure that no one sees you actually doing it.
And she finally takes up kind of a pensive look, glancing kind of aside to her. Are humans never born that are not recorded?
In this day and age, extremely rare. It would mean that you were born outside of normal society. Even the homeless usually end up at a hospital to have a child, even if they can't afford it.
There's kind of a shrug there because outside of normal society is a pretty apt description, really.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, there's just kind of a helpless shrug.
There would be lots of questions that go along with it, especially in this country, given just the current political situations.
Strange. But I take your word for it. You know more of it than I do. If you could look into it, tell me if it is feasible. I would appreciate it.
She simply nods.
And
Trying
is
to
there
think.
anything else I can do for you, Onrai?
How many packs currently operate in this set?
Currently, 3.
And those 3 are?
My own pack, which is 3 strong. The Striders of Ice and Concrete, which are... And she pauses, knitting her brow a moment. I believe 4 strong. And the Urban Vigil, which has only 2 members currently.
It seems that your pack is fairly well held down with a theurge.
There's a vague smirk there. These Striders of Ice and Concrete... The Striders of Ice and Concrete are patronized by reindeer, while the Urban Vigil is patronized by fox.
Just a slight look of disappointment that's on her face when she thinks about the fact that there's just no cockroach packs anywhere. And she kind of scrunches her nose up a bit. My seniors, when they sent me away, sent me off, I suppose is probably the best word to describe it, said to be on the lookout for packs that I might fit in, given New York's reputation.
Well, there are currently 2. I imagine with the number of cubs that we have already. Never mind the fact that the Den Father has had visions, there will be more. There may well come a 4th pack, but there may well also simply remain 3 packs with far more members. Could certainly use it, considering each pack is currently very small.
She'll nod. She seems to be sort of in thought, and then she just kind of looks up with a smile. I have enough to work with, at least. For now. There's some tasks that I can work on that'll be helpful.
There's kind of a serene nod. I wouldn't rush the matter of a pack, Andre. I'm sure they will come looking.
And she sort of straightens up, leans back until her back pops, and then looks at 10 Point and just gives her a curt nod.
Until next time, then, Andre.
Until next time, Rhea. And she will sling the bag over her shoulder and turn out and head back towards the Cairn Heart so she can cross over.
10 Point will dust her hands, take a moment to glance in a couple of directions before striking off with purpose. Because her work is never done. Ever. Ever.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe we can end our scene. Thank you, players, for playing, and thank you, Bob, for watching, because I assume it's you. And have a great evening.